Yo, what's up everyone? I'm back. It's been a while since I put out a guide, and I'm excited to bring you my first guide for Set 4. And this one is for Elderwood Brawlers. Now, for those of you who've been playing since Set 4's release, you probably remember Brawler Ashe being one of the super popular and dominant comps at the very beginning. But shit's changed a little bit. Basically, the things that have changed are that A, VEIGAR is much more prominent, as is AHRI relative to release, and B, Giant Slayer is super popular. Now, what this means is that, first of all, you're going to want a lot of magic resistance to counter VEIGAR and AHRI, particularly with VEIGAR, because VEIGAR can sort of just one-shot your carries, and there's not that much you can do about it. And we'll talk about itemization choices that can help a little bit to deal with that in the future. And also with Giant Slayer, the way Giant Slayer works as an item is Giant Slayer will always do bonus damage to units who have 1750 or more maximum health. That means brawlers, which pretty much all have over that amount of health when you have 6 brawlers and have them 2-starred, are going to take a lot of extra damage from anyone who has Giant Slayer. And because Giant Slayer is so popular in this meta, basically you playing brawlers is meaning you're getting a lot less efficiency off of your HP pool. So instead, we have a different variant of Ashe carry, and it is focused on 6 Elderwood as a synergy instead of 6 brawler rather. And the way Elderwood works is every 2 seconds, Elderwood champions grow, which is cool to just look at. But they also gain bonus stats. So they get 25 armor and MR, 10 AD, and spell power every 2 seconds, which is a really big deal, right? Because this stacks up to 5 times, meaning you can get an extra 250 armor and MR at the end of the fight. This helps a lot in the late game scenarios where you're dealing with VEIGAR or even Kayn, who is a major piece of late game compositions and does a lot of magic damage. So instead of focusing on using health as our defensive resource, we're going to use MR and armor as our defensive resource. The other nice thing about Elderwood is that it applies to Ashe, right? Because Ashe is an Elderwood hunter. And she is going to get a lot of extra MR if she manages to make it to the end of a fight, meaning that in those close scenarios where you're fighting a VEIGAR or an AHRI or a Kayn, she's going to be able to clean up without just getting one shot at the end of the fight. So with this variant, you do end up having some brawlers in, but it's more just because it's convenient. It's not really the focus of the build. So the core units of the comp are going to be Ashe, Nunu, and eventually you're going to want Set in there. And Ashe is going to be your primary DPS carry. Nunu is going to be your primary tank for most of the game. And Set is going to be sort of your late game win condition. And as you can see here, because you have Nunu and Ashe already for 2 Elderwood, you're just going to be filling out the rest of those Elderwood and complementing those synergies. So Nunu's already a brawler, so it makes sense to add in Maokai as a brawler. Warwick adds Hunter. You only really need 2 Hunter. I think 3 and 4 Hunter and even 5 Hunter are kind of overkill. Because if you look at the synergy, the way it works is you get 0.5 second reduction on how often Hunter procs, which is obviously significant, but you don't get like a huge damage increase. And sometimes in short fights, it doesn't really matter that much. So you only really need 1 level of Hunter. So you're going to play Warwick for that. And because you get these 3 brawlers in, it makes sense to just add in Set as your 4th brawler. We'll talk a little bit about what early game units you can use until you find Set a little bit later in the guide. But let's talk about the rest of the composition. So between Ashe, Nunu, and Maokai, you're going to have 3 Elderwood. So you're going to want to just put 3 other Elderwood in, unless you get chosen, which we'll talk about. And the ideal chosens to have in are Ezreal, VEIGAR, and Lulu. Ezreal, just because he's a 5 cost, who's not the greatest 5 cost, but you know he does provide a lot of extra attack speed and importantly attack speed reduction, which could be super good in the mirror matchup when you're facing other Ashes, or just good in general for stopping the enemy from casting quickly. VEIGAR is a really strong unit who got reworked on the most recent patch so that he targets the unit with the lowest health, meaning that he's going to often be targeting carries. So he's going to hold a lot of your extra AP items and mana items that you have left over, but he's not going to be the focus of this composition. and you're going to play Lulu. Now, you might be wondering why Hecarim versus Lulu. Basically, it's because Lulu, in her ult, basically amplifies the effectiveness of the rest of your team, whereas Hecarim's just sort of a standalone tank, and you don't really need more tanks in the comp. So Lulu, every time she ults, she's going to be targeting the, I believe, lowest health unit on your team, and just making them a little bit beefier, a little bit more resilient. So that'll help a lot if Ashe is getting jumped on by an assassin or getting targeted. Whereas Hecarim is just another tank, right? And he's not particularly good late game. So you're going to want to play Lulu instead. So let's talk a little bit about variants of this comp. So let's say you get chosen, right? Let's say you get chosen. Let's say it's chosen VEIGAR. Obviously, if you got chosen Ashe, that'd be amazing. But let's say it's chosen Elderwood VEIGAR, or even chosen Elderwood Maokai. It doesn't really matter which one. What you would do in this case is, let's see, does this work? Boom. Boom. The chosen champion is selected by clicking a trait. Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. That's a cool feature. So in this case, you wouldn't need the Lulu. I would say she's probably the least valuable of these units, assuming VEIGAR has even one item on him. And at 8, this allows you to play another unit like a Kayn. And Kayn is your ideal case. Kayn is pretty much the best 5 cost pound for pound. He fits in pretty much every comp. He's always going to be a huge threat. And crucially, he gives this comp access to the backline, which you don't normally have, right? Because this is sort of a front to back comp. Set can damage a backline, but he's not a huge threat to enemy carries until the fight is almost over. So Kayn is generally the best unit to splash in, and you're going to want to make him generally blue Kayn. I think blue Kayn is the right call pretty much 9 out of 10 times. The only situation where you would run red Kayn over blue Kayn is when you already have a ton of damage items on Kayn. Like, let's say you have a crit gauntlet and you have, I don't know, another crit gauntlet and then a GA or something. Or even, let's just keep it simple. Let's say we have 2 jewel gauntlets on Kayn. That's a situation where it's like, okay, we're probably going overkill if we make him blue Kayn. And maybe in that situation, we want to make him red Kayn. But I would say 9 times out of 10, when in doubt, just go blue Kayn. So yeah, that's what you would do if you got Elderwood chosen. If you got Elderwood chosen and you also got Elderwood Spatula, what you would do is you would ideally make Set your chosen, or sorry, your Elderwood, and then you would go 9 and you would add in the remaining chosens. So you would add in the Hecarim. That's the only appearance he gets to make in the comp, unfortunately, and you add in the Lulu. And that gives you 9 Elderwood, which is insanely strong late game, because 40 armor MR, stacking up to 5 times. Dog, that's a lot of MR and armor. So that'll allow you to pretty much win versus pretty much any comp, just off of strength of resistances. But more typically, you're not going to be able to get an Elderwood spat, so you're just looking to add in legendaries. Let's say you're adding in a Kayn at 8, and then you might even want to add in something like a Lee Sin or even a Yoni at 9 if you had Elderwood spat. And then generally the best way to top off your comp is not by adding more synergies late game, because if you think about it, adding more synergies, let's say you wanted to add in 2 more brawlers, you'd be adding in pretty crappy units. You'd be adding in like a Tahm Kench or like a Vi or Silas. Silas is actually a pretty solid unit, but late game, in stage 6, he's not going to be doing all that much. So you're going to want to look to add just 5 cost end game. If you get chosen brawler, I would say it's probably the less desirable of the chosens to get, but it's a really good win streak chosen to pick up in stage 2 or 3. So let's say you got that. Let's say it's like a chosen Nunu, which you should just play 100% of the time. What you could do is you could go 9 and then you add in 6 brawler, and then at least at this point you're not adding in 2 useless units. You're just adding in 1 okay unit like a Silas, and he could be your late game addition to the team. So yeah, there's a bunch of different options you have here if you hit chosen. But now that we've covered sort of the units that you could play, let's talk a little bit about itemization. So the most important item, I would say, super early game, is Sunfire Cape. Sunfire Cape, it got nerfed, but it's still really, really good early game, and it will help you save a lot of HP at minimum, and at best, it'll help you win streak. Sunfire is best on Nunu, because him being an Elderwood and a Brawler, and him being a 3 cost, means that he gets really tanky and he survives a long time in fights. Additionally, the extra health benefits Nunu, because the way Nunu works is if he has higher health than whoever he's ulting at the time that he ults them. He's going to deal bonus damage, I think 50% bonus damage, and his damage is all going to be true damage. So he's going to hit like a truck. So Sunfire is ideal on him. In the early game, before you find him, let's remove this. Let's say you have a Tahm Kench. You can have Tahm Kench hold the items, and then you transfer it to Nunu. But if you hit like a Chosen Maokai or something, don't be afraid to just slam the Sunfire on him to aid you in the win streak. But yeah, Sunfire I would say is the best item for your Nunu. And then in terms of the Ashe, who's going to be the primary damage carry, single most important item is Giant Slayer. Reason being, it's just a really good all-around damage item that scales super well into the late game when people start hitting that 1750 health threshold. Additionally, it helps versus chosen units who come as 2-star and often are also 1750 health or more once 2-starred. And if people put any kind of belt items, that might be enough to push them over the threshold. So for instance, like a chosen Riven with a single belt item will often be over the 1750 health threshold, meaning your Ashe scales well into the late game. Whereas items like Infinity Edge and Deathblade aren't quite as good versus high health units. Second most important item is probably, and it's arguable here, is a defensive item. And I personally really like Trap Claw. And we're trying to find Trap Claw right here. Trap Claw. I can't find Trap Claw. All right. Well, Trap Claw is, I would say, the best defensive item for Ashe on this meta because it helps protect her versus CC from like an Aatrox. And it also helps her not get one-shot by an AHRI or VEIGAR. Some people might argue that QSS is better. It sort of just depends on the lobby that you're in. I would say either one of these items are fine to just make immediately. Like if you already have a QSS, you don't need to hold out for a Trap Claw and vice versa. Thing with QSS is it helps a lot more versus CC. So let's say there's a Sidwani perma-ulting your team. It's going to help a lot more there. But it's not going to do all that much versus damage, which is kind of an issue late game. You can throw something like a Guardian Angel, and I'm having so much trouble finding stuff on this right now. Let's see. Okay, there's a Trap Claw. Boom. You can also opt for a Guardian Angel on the Ashe, but just keep in mind that does consume a sword. So you're only going to really want to do that if you already have your Sunfire and you already have a sword used for a Giant Slayer. So it's just kind of an expensive item that uses up components that you need for higher priority things. So I would say more generally speaking, you're going to want a Trap Claw or QSS. And then the third damage item is ideally a Rage Blade. The reason being that Ashe, her ult gives her more attack speed, meaning she stacks Rage Blade incredibly quickly to maximum attack speed. And it also just synergizes with her ult because she fires flurries of arrows once her ult activates, allowing her to do tons of damage over the course of a team fight. But if you can't get a Rage Blade, it is totally fine, honestly, just to slam another Giant Slayer. And that's good items for Ashe, I would say. Sorry, that's my dog trying to be a guard dog. We're working on it, but he's still very loud. You can at least look at him in the meantime. Okay, so that's what you want in terms of core items for these champions. In terms of the remaining items, I would say you want to prioritize Set. So Set is really good if you have even a single damage item on him. Jeweled Gauntlet probably being the best in terms of just raw damage. And you only really need one damage item on him, particularly if he's Set 2, to carry. So you want this on him, and then this is not super important, but if you can get a QSS on him, this is really helpful because it'll stop him from getting Zephyred in the late game. So that covers pretty much the basic itemization. Nice thing about this comp is it's pretty simple, right? Collect Elderwoods, collect one Hunter, collect 2 other Brawlers. Non-Elderwood brawlers, and you're good to go. Let's talk a little bit about positioning. So for this comp, the most important things by far are that Ashe is protected, right? So you want to have multiple units ideally surrounding her, and that when you get Set, you solo frontline him. The reason why is because Set is impossible to one-shot a Set, right? No matter what, he will not die instantly. He will always get his passive, the boss, up, and he'll leave and start getting yoked and doing sit-ups and stuff. So you want to solo frontline him so that he is likely to get his ult off as quickly as possible in the fight and just get that upfront damage then his boss trait will activate, he'll leave the fight, and then he'll come back, ideally super pumped up with all that true damage, and put the hurt on the enemy team. But in terms of other positioning variants, you can look at stuff like this. So I'm going to show you a clip here where I actually ended up hitting at a 3-star VEIGAR that I was not looking for. It was a nice surprise here. So in this clip, you're going to see that I hit chosen VEIGAR. So I had Elderwood, and I chose to just throw in a third mage because then VEIGAR became such a focus of my team. So you can see there's a little bit of flexibility in the comp. And I chose to split up my Ashe and my VEIGAR just so that if there are any Zeds or Kanes or anything that does AoE damage, I don't have both of my carries on the same side being compromised, right? Yeah, so as you can see here, not only does it keep them safe from infiltrators, it keeps them safe from AHRI ults, Sejuani ults, basically any AoE. Basically, it's a risk mitigation strategy, right? So if Ashe gets hit, there's no way VEIGAR is getting hit, and vice versa. Right, so this is honestly just a satisfying fight to watch because my VEIGAR is just so big, and he's just like, look at this. I think he's actually a ridiculous champion right now, but that's for another video. So that's how you generally want to think about positioning in the comp. But yeah, the core principles are corner your carries and surround them with units. And sometimes you want to be all on one side together depending on what you've scouted. And make sure that they have tanks in front of them. And then Nunu, you want to put on the second row so that he gets into the fight as soon as possible. It's really relevant when he has Sunfire Cape, because the way Sunfire Cape works is it activates on a unit within 2 hexes of Nunu. So you don't want him to be frontline, but you want him to be close enough that he activates Sunfire Cape as soon as possible. All right, guys. I tried to keep this guide short, but I failed abjectly at that. In any case, it's good to be back. I'm going to be putting out more guides for set 4. Until then, my name is Primal. Your job is to climb, and I'll see you at the top.